Okay, so let's dive right into this. What happens when your job title just doesn't match the work you actually do? Well, a government lawyer in Taiwan had to sue her own employer to get an answer. And really, this is just a classic story of a highly skilled expert going up against the rulebook, and trust me, the outcome it's pretty fascinating.
So here's the big question at the heart of all this. Should you get paid for your qualifications and the work you do, or for what your official job title says you do? It's a question that actually sparked a huge legal battle, one that went all the way to Taiwan's High Administrative Court. I mean, this case basically puts the reality of someone's day-to-day work in one corner and the nitpicky fine print of their job description in the other.
And the person at the center of it all is Lin Xiaoling. She's the government lawyer who actually took her employer to court over this. Her case, man, it really pulls back the curtain on the way bureaucracies think. It reveals how a single, tiny word in some rulebook can end up being more powerful than years of expertise and all the hard work you put in every day.
All right, so first up, let's break down what was actually at stake for Lin Xiaoling. You know, the principle behind this whole thing is massive, but like a lot of these disputes, it all started with a pretty specific amount of money.
Yep, 5,095 new Taiwan dollars. That's about, what, 160 US dollars? That was the difference in her professional allowance every single month. It's basically the gap between the pay for, general administrative work and the higher legal professional rate that she felt her skills totally deserved.
So the whole legal fight really zeroed in on this 4-month stretch, right after she started her new job at the Xinchuang District Office. She started in April, and for the next few months, she got the lower allowance. By December, she'd had enough and asked for the back pay. But here's the thing. Even though the dispute was about those 4 months, the court's decision was going to set a precedent that would define her entire role and her pay moving forward.
Okay, so now let's look at the case for the allowance. Lin built her argument, and honestly, when you first look at it, it seems like a total slam dunk. It's just incredibly strong. She laid out a really clear, super logical argument for why she deserved that specialist pay.
Her argument basically boiled down to this. Hey, I'm a legal professional. She'd passed the super tough civil service exam for the legal affairs track. Her official classification was legal affairs. The whole reason she was hired was to handle the office's legal work, and, her day-to-day tasks were almost all legal stuff. It just seemed like common sense, right? Everything pointed to the same conclusion. She was a legal specialist, so she should be paid like one.
And this is where the heart of her claim becomes crystal clear. You just have to look at her credentials versus what she did every day. On one hand, you have all her qualifications. She passed the higher legal exam, she's certified for the legal affairs track, she has a law degree. Then, on the other hand, look at her duties. Handling lawsuits, writing defenses, reviewing contracts, giving legal advice. I mean, they match up perfectly. It really does look like an open and shut case.
And get this, she even used the organization's own rulebook against them. She pointed out that their own rules say that the Secretariat, her department, is responsible for legal affairs. And guess who was hired to do that work? Her. I mean, at this point you're thinking, case closed, right? Well, not so fast.
All right, now let's flip the script and look at the government's rebuttal. This is where we see a completely different picture start to form, and where, bureaucracy gets really interesting.
So, the government's lawyers, they didn't argue about her skills. They didn't say, oh, she's not a good lawyer, or deny that she was doing legal work. Nope. Instead, they did something kind of clever and a little frustrating. They completely ignored what she did and focused entirely on the fine print of her official job description. It's all about what's on paper.
And this, right here, this donut chart, this became the government's trump card. This is the official breakdown of her legal clerk duties. And, yeah, you can see it right there. Legal work is the biggest slice, 60%. But the government's entire case, their whole argument, hinged on that other 40%.
So here's their logic. They argue that your pay isn't based on you, the person, or even what you spend most of your time doing. No, it's based on the official, predefined position. And since this position was, on paper, 40% non-legal work, well, they said it just can't be considered a full-time specialist role. End of story.
Okay, so now the court is faced with these two totally competing arguments. You've got reality on one side and the rule book on the other.
they have to make a choice. And, as it so often happens in the legal world, this entire massive case boiled down to the very specific definition of one single word.
And the verdict? The courts sided with the government. Lin Xiaoleng lost her case. And when she appealed, that was dismissed too. The ruling was final. Even though everyone agreed she was doing a ton of legal work, she was not entitled to that professional allowance.
But why? Right? That's the question. If everyone agreed she was doing all of this valuable legal work, what was the one thing that made the difference? To really get it, we need to zoom way in on the specific legal term that the entire case ended up focusing on. It's a word that just perfectly captures the kind of logic you only find in a bureaucracy.
The whole thing came down to this one word, zhuanzhe. The regulations say that to get the specialist pay, you have to be in a zhuanzhe position. So what does that mean? Well, it's a legal and administrative term that means something like solely responsible or dedicated. The key thing here is that it implies an exclusive focus. The court basically interpreted it to mean you had to have 100% focus on that one duty.
And there you have it. That's the whole ballgame. The court looked at that 60% figure from her job description, and they didn't see a majority. They saw definitive proof that her role was not zhenjie. It wasn't solely dedicated. Because her job on paper wasn't 100% legal, she lost. Simple as that.
So why does any of this matter? I know, you might be thinking this is just some super specific technical case from Taiwan. But really, this goes way beyond one person's salary dispute. It actually gives us some huge lessons about how any large, rule-based organization works, whether that's a government or even a massive corporation.
So what's the real takeaway here for anyone who works inside a big organization? The court's decision really isn't just about Taiwanese civil service law. It shines a spotlight on a few key principles that are, frankly, relevant to anyone trying to navigate a bureaucracy.
Okay, so here are the big lessons from this whole verdict. First, your official job description can literally be more powerful than the work you actually do every day. Second, in law and bureaucracy, the super precise definition of a single word is everything. Third, the rules are based on the position, not on the qualifications of the person filling it. And finally, having a responsibility, even if it's the majority of your job, might not legally count as a dedicated role. It's just a stark reminder that in any system that runs on detailed rules, the fine print isn't just important, it's what matters most.
That really leaves us with a provocative question, doesn't it? When rules and reality clash, which one should win? It really challenges us to think about what fairness even means inside a world run by regulations. Should we reward the reality of the work people are doing, or do we have to uphold the letter of the law, even when the result feels, well, anything but fair?